this whole question about whether or not we had a choice to come down here, did we get forced down here? Are we forced to even stay here? Everything is about free will. You can't even imagine how much interest there is everywhere to participate in this. This is the hottest ticket in the entire universe.
Oh, I think this is the best thing going on anywhere, to be in human form incarnated on Earth at this time. I truly believe souls line up to be part of this experience.
There is a big demand, I've heard, on the other side to come and experience life.
100% we have a choice to be here, and I believe there are millions of souls that want to come to Earth. It is a gift for us to be here. It is definitely the soul's choice, as Earth is the densest, hardest learning ground for us to expand and experience, and we bring so much with us after.
When we experience things that are very difficult, we might say, well, I would never choose this. And from a human perspective, you might not. But from the higher perspective, from the soul's perspective, in order to grow, I think sometimes we choose to experience hardships.
This is something we wanted, and we wanted to do it with, we couldn't wait to do it. We're like, put me in the game, coach.
I've often thought about this question, and I've thought many times that I might be mandated to Earth. What did I do wrong? Why am I here again?
When a climber is climbing Mount Everest, he's going to be suffering. He's going to be cold and tired and miserable. And there's going to be times where he says, why the heck did I do this? But he did it because he's taking on a big challenge, and he's growing and getting stronger from it. And it's the same with these lives. We are doing the Mount Everest of physical incarnations by coming down here on Earth, and it's something to be proud of.
If you are here, you absolutely volunteered. And I do love the other one that I always hear. When I'm done on it, I'm never coming back. No, you're coming back.
I hear so often people go, I would never have chosen this. I would have never chosen this. And that's how I know that's exactly how they chose it.
On some level, we all chose to be here. We chose our parents. We chose our basic circumstances. And we knew, for the most part, what we were getting into.
It's only after we get here that humans forget who we are, and then we say, are you kidding? I am never coming back here again. We know that it's going to be challenging. We know that there's going to be pain as well as pleasure, but the soul also knows that's how we're going to grow. And the soul wants nothing more than to bring back more love to this beautiful experience of simply being the soul.
Well, I understand that you've done this beautiful documentary film, based on a lot of near-death experiencers. And I'd like to ask you, what compelled you to start doing this kind of work? Did you have a near-death experience yourself, or something attracted you to this subject?
So I am not an experiencer, but I'm a seeker. So for the last 30 years, Sergey, I've been trying to figure out, who are we? Why are we here? And what the hell is really going on? And so it's been a natural progression, studying all kinds of things, both traditional spiritual traditions and more New Age stuff, and then things like 12-step programs and things like just anything I could do to expand my understanding and my awareness about the nature of life and the nature of who and what we are. And I have to say, a lot of it was just to kind of alleviate some of my own suffering, the challenges that I faced in my own life. That was a big part of the motivation. And then this film is just kind of a natural progression of all of that. The actual genesis of the film was probably about 6 years ago. I was working on my own book. It's kind of a personal development book called Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. Talk a lot about the things that I've done in my life to transform my life. And there's a whole story about how I changed careers. I used to be an entertainment lawyer in Los Angeles. Then I became a professional photographer and filmmaker. There were a lot of challenges along the way. And I talked in that book about how I overcame those challenges. But while I was writing that book, I read a novel. The novel is called Adventures in the Afterlife by a guy named William Buhlman. William was one of the lead instructors at the Monroe Institute for a long time. Robert Monroe was one of the pioneers in out-of-body experiences. And when I read that book about the afterlife, even though it was written as a novel, it really sparked something in me. And up until that point, obviously I was familiar with the near-death experience, but I hadn't really dived into it. And I certainly didn't know anybody's personal stories, not to any real extent. So when I read that book, I actually ended up optioning the novel from the author to turn it into a feature film. I was writing the screenplay for that movie, and while I was working on that, I started doing some research. And I was going on to the internet, I was going on to YouTube and watching a lot of NDE videos, basically. And then the pandemic hit, so we were all glued to our computer screens even more. And I started reaching out to some of the people that I was seeing on the interviews. One person you might know is Christian Sundberg. Christian is a pre-birth experiencer. And I had a Zoom call set up with him just ostensibly to introduce myself. I wasn't even sure why I was reaching out to him. And that morning it just hit me. I need to do a documentary about all this. So that was the genesis. And I started reaching out to more people, some local people. To date, I've been working on the film for 2 years. It's still not finished, but I'm getting close. I've interviewed over 60 people. About half of them are near-death experiencers. The rest are channel psychics and mediums. And I started out with a list of 35 questions. And these were the questions that I wanted answers to. Like, what is the soul? Do we have soul contracts or agreements? What is karma? Is there such a thing as hell? You know, all these kind of basic questions about the afterlife. And I made up a list of questions, and I asked pretty much the first 40 people that I interviewed, even though a lot of them were experiencers, I didn't let any of them tell their stories. Instead, I asked them these questions because these are the questions I wanted answers to. I was also very sensitive not to sensationalize or exploit the death experience. So I didn't want to focus a lot on the car accident, you know, and all of that, the surgery, the botched surgery. But then about a year ago, I realized that there is value in telling the stories. So I kind of revisited some of the people I had interviewed, and then I sought out a bunch of new people to get a bunch of first-person accounts of their near-death or their spiritually transformative experience. So the film has two parts to it. One part is this question and answer, and it's put together as a sequence. And then the other are these individual near-death experience accounts.
Now, Peter, tell me this. What was your main realization after talking to all these people? How long it took? It like 2 years you've been interviewing them?
2 years, yeah.
Okay. So what was your personal main realization after all this conversation with these amazing people?
So the basic premise of the film is that until we know who we really are as spiritual beings, it's going to be very difficult to have a better life while we still think we're here. So the basic premise of the film is we're not who we think we are. We're not these physical bodies that have a limited lifespan that have to fight with other bodies over resources. And we got to get what we can get while we can get it. And everybody else is kind of the competition. And we're justified in doing whatever we need to do to survive. If that's who we really are, then this world kind of makes sense. It's not very pretty. A lot of people suffer, and nobody gets out of here alive, excuse my pun, but it makes sense. But what if that's not who we are? What if we're not these physical bodies? What if who we are eternal spiritual beings that never die? And what if the body is just a vessel, just a means to navigate through the physical experience? And what if we're here by choice? And what if we came here with a purpose, something that we wanted to achieve for our soul and for the benefit of other souls? And what if we have soul groups? And what if we have soul guides? And what if we have guardian angels? And what if we have a whole team that's helping us navigate this experience? And what if there is some profound meaning in the experience that's not about the car payments, it's not about what school you go to, it's not about, any of the things that we think are important. So the basic premise is, this is an opportunity to re-examine all of that and then make a new choice, a new decision. Because, for me, here are the key hallmarks of the near-death experience. Number one is a separation from the body, right? So many NDErs talk about the fact that during the car accident or during the botched surgery or whatever, they leave their body and they look back on it as if it's as if it's someone or something else. In many cases, a lot of them don't even recognize that that's their body. They have to get close up, and then all of a sudden it hits them. Wow, that was who I was, or who I thought I was. But the realization is, no, life continues. There is no, a lot of them say it's like walking from one room to another, or it's like waking up from a dream. And then all of a sudden, we're in another place. Now, what characterizes that other place? Well, the first thing is unconditional love. Every one of them talks about this feeling that is beyond description. It's beyond human words. It's beyond human experience. And the closest they can come is to say it was this sense of unconditional love. There's also usually a sense of peace. All the conflict, all the turmoil is gone. It's also a sense of joy, the sense of elation. You know, several of them have said to me, I was moving into the light after I died, and I didn't care where I was going because it felt so good. So that's the second characteristic. And the third third commonality, I mean, there's obviously a bunch more, but the third one that I latch on to is this idea of oneness, this idea of unity, of connection with everyone and everything, and this sense that we're all part of a greater whole. And that whole, by the way, is pretty cool. It's kind of divine, actually. It's this wonderful, amazing sense of oneness and unity and joining. Now, why do I focus on those three? Well, if the basic premise of the film is we're not who we think we are, what if we started living life as if those three things were true right now while we still think we're here? So this is not to say ignore your body or ignore other people's bodies, but maybe recognize, wow, maybe there's something more to me. Maybe I'm not just this physical body. And maybe, just maybe, I'm connected to everyone and everything in a way that I'm not really conscious of right now. But if I really go inside and I really get quiet and I do my prayer, my meditation, I have this understanding that we're all connected, which means what I do for you, I do for myself. And what I fail to do for you, I fail to do for myself. And then the third part is, you know, many of them, the NDErs say, you know, we are love. It's not just that we feel love. That's who and what we really are. Now, most of us, most of the time, don't really see ourselves that way. We don't see ourselves as love, as goodness, as generosity, as kindness. I can only speak for myself, but most of my life, I thought I was bad. And not in a Michael Jackson kind of way. And I thought I was selfish, and I thought I was unworthy, and I thought I was not good enough, and I didn't deserve to be loved. And I had to manipulate other people to get what I want from them. And I had to on and on and on and on. So by embracing what we've learned from the NDErs and other people who have these spiritually transformative experiences, we can begin to transform life while we still think we're here. And for me, that's the recipe for a happy life.
Yeah. Okay, Peter, let me ask you this. Let's come back to our subject about the people that you interviewed. What story, which guest impacted you the most? Or several guests?
Yeah, so Sergey, every one of these people has touched me in powerful, positive ways. I have a mix of people in the film. There's a bunch of people that you've seen, you know, you've read their books, you've seen them on all the podcasts, but there's also about half the people you've never met before. And that was really important to me. I wanted to give new people a chance to shine. I wanted to give new people a platform to share their experience, for people to get to know them. And so I can't say that one has touched me more than another. They've all touched me in very unique and special ways. One of the things that's unique about my film is that every one of them has been in front of my camera. So we've been in the same room together. Many of them have traveled to my location. I'm in New Jersey in the US. And my deal was, if you fly into Newark Airport, I will come and pick you up. I'll bring you to the location, which you see behind me. We'll do your interview. If we have time, I'll take you out for dinner. If not, I'll take you back to the airport, so you don't have to stay overnight if you don't want to. And so I tried to make it as easy as I could for them. But some of the best times were in the car ride back and forth to the airport with these people, to get to know them as people, to recognize that they're more than just their story. Now, the one thing I will say is that, in my estimation, most of them for the most part, they're not getting rich off of this experience. And in fact, a lot of them have been subjected to all kinds of ridicule, all kinds of attack, all kinds of debunking and all of that. And many of them are still out there telling their story years later. And it's not for the financial gain. I mean, you may say, well, they just want attention. I didn't experience that. My sense of the motivation, at least the people that I met and that I interviewed, having spent time with them outside of the interview, was almost every one of them wants to make a contribution. They want to make the world a better place. They're here to be of service. And that's another thing that I think is a hallmark of a genuine near-death experience. Many of them come back transformed. Many of them come back as changed people, and they want to make a difference in the world. They want to be of service to their fellow man. And my estimation is, pretty much everyone I met is genuine in that regard. Now, they all still have issues, just like me. They're all still just people. But I loved every minute with every one of them. And I have to say that's one of the reasons I'm still doing it 2 years later, is I just love having these conversations. I love meeting these people. And hopefully together, we're going to make the world a better place.
Yeah, that was my impression too when I spoke to these people. They just want to share, and in special, they want to share the experience of love that they experienced. Because almost everyone, concluded the podcast with the same message, love each other. That love is the most important.
Dr. Eben Alexander III, a former Harvard neurosurgeon, had a near-fatal bout of bacterial meningitis that left him in a coma for 7 days. While in coma, he had a life-changing near-death experience during which he was guided around the afterlife by a beautiful but mysterious spiritual being.
I remember being a speck of awareness on a butterfly wing. There were millions of other butterflies looping and spiraling in these vast formations, just in a scene of incredible richness and beauty. Down below us, a meadow surrounded by a rich forest. And in the surround, there were waterfalls and crystal blue pools. There was incredible plant life, everything growing. There was no sign of any death or decay. That realm is sharp, clear, detailed, meaningful, powerful, filled with emotional truth and depth. The most beautiful part about it was I wasn't alone. There was a lovely woman, sparkling blue eyes, high cheekbones, high forehead, broad smile. She looked at me with a look of pure love, and she never had to say a word because her deep and powerful emotional truth was driven straight into my awareness through this mind meld, this telepathic connection we had. And in that messaging, she gave me what I think was the central message I was to bring back to this world, a message for all of us. You are deeply loved and cherished forever. You have nothing to fear. You are richly cared for. And I cannot tell you how reassuring, how validating, how comforting that message was, because it really underlined the spiritual reality that I was feeling, that this was home. This felt very familiar. When I tell this story, the chills run up and down my spine. It's an incredible sense of love and connection overflowing with this unconditional love of the divine, that feeling of that God force that is so reassuring to all near-death experiences across all cultures, that helps them to realize they are much more than a physical being in a physical body limited by birth to death. And so when I came back from all this, in looking back on it all, I reflected on the great power of that beautiful spiritual guide, that guardian angel on the butterfly wing, who was so important to me. Now, it turns out that in my reading, I'd never really paid much attention to the near-death experience literature because I thought it was all hallucinations of the dying brain, playing tricks, who cares? And now that I'd had my own experience, I realized it was far, far more than that. What they said was the guardian angel, that spiritual guide, is someone very important to you in your life. And yet I knew I had never met her in my 54 years of life before my coma. Turns out I was adopted. Of course, that was knowledge to me from my earliest age. That adoption abandonment wound plays a huge part in my story overall. But in that kind of situation, this beautiful guardian angel with this message of love that I connected me so much with the universe. I didn't know who she was. And it was through reuniting with my birth family, which only happened 1 year before my coma, that I met them. 4 months after my coma, my birth sister, Kathy, promised to send me a picture of Betsy, the birth sister who had passed from this world in 1998, 2 years before I even found out about her existence. And when Kathy sent me that picture and it arrived in the mail and just brought me to tears, just this incredible sense of loss of this beautiful birth sister who I never knew. And that's why when I was next day was reading a book by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Life After Death, page 28, I'll never forget it. This young girl who had a profound near-death experience was welcomed to heaven by her brother. But when she came back to this world, was explaining it all to her father and said, I don't understand. I don't have a brother. And he told her, well, you did, but he died 3 months before you were born. So we never told you about his existence. And that's when I looked up at that picture on the dresser that had just arrived the day before, that had sent me into such an emotional tailspin. And I looked at it and it was like Betsy's looking at me. Do you finally get it? Yes, Betsy. I finally get it. To connect the dots and recognize my beautiful birth sister as the guardian angel on the butterfly wing was an incredibly revealing moment in my life.
What about this idea that we voluntarily choose to come here?
Yeah, everybody says that. Almost everybody says that. That we have a plan, we have this group of guardian angels, like a little supporting group, closed ones, our closest friends on the other side. And you volunteer, you say, you know what, I want to go and do the crash course. I want to do this. I don't want to go millennia through this beautiful heaven and learn. I want to do it very quick, several years. And they say, man, we admire you. We're going to be with you. We're going to support you. Are you sure you want to go? Because it's very hard. And the soul says, no, I'm excited. I want to go. And everybody is very proud of the soul, because not everyone wants to do that. It's hard.
Yeah, a lot of souls don't want to come. They don't want to come because it's too much. It's brutal.
Yeah, you starting with the Christian Sandberg. I published a video with him probably a month ago or something, and I called it a near-birth experience. Yeah, he was.
Oh, that's funny. That's good.
He was so articulate. He was so good.
And you know what? He's a beautiful guy.
Yeah.
He's a really great guy. I've met him a few times now, and he's very genuine. Again, he's one of those people. He takes all kinds. These people get all kinds of crap on social media and everything else, and they're still doing it. And he's got a family. He's got kids. I can only imagine what his kids get at school. Yeah. From other kids. I mean, you really, really have to think this through. If you're going to go, I don't think it's so bad today. But, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you were told you were crazy.
I know.
Some of these people were put on medication.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would be out there if I had that story, dealing with what they have to deal with.
You see, all these people that you interviewed and I interviewed, they're about almost the same people. These are the brave ones that decided to come out with the stories, books, write the books, whatever. And they're not doing it for money, because you're not making money as a writer. We know that. Except Stephen King and John Grisham, they make money. That's it. But these books about NDE, they don't make any money. Just people want to get it out. They want to talk. They want to share. And like you said, it's not 20 years. 20 years ago, it was dangerous. Now everybody's talking about it. It's all online. People sharing the stories freely. It's safe.
Well, safer.
Yeah, it's safer. It's not exactly 100% safe.
I interviewed somebody this week, and her family still doesn't talk to her, and she came out 20 years ago.
But imagine how brave they are. Like Ibn Alexander, I interviewed him too. He was a successful, neurologist, and he was teaching in Harvard, right?
Yeah.
And here he comes with all these stories, and then probably he became an outcast after that. Like, he doesn't care, he's just sharing the story.
Yeah, he was publicly attacked. He was debunked, the whole thing. You know, he was, again, they're my heroes. All these people are my heroes.
Right.
The fact that they're willing at really no financial gain in most cases, you know, to put their story out there and all that, you really, really want to have to make a difference in the world.
Exactly. How about Betty? I mean, you got to be so brave. She was on my show too. Beautiful soul. Betty Guandan. I forgot her last name right now. You know what?
Guadagno.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guadagno, yeah.
She was a prostitute. I mean, and she goes out and she's completely changed. And it's a great example. I mean, how you can become a completely different person through all this awakening. Yeah.
She's great. She actually, so this is funny. She lives in Brooklyn, so she's about an hour and a half away from where I live. And she came out, she took the train, we did the interview, and she went home. And when she left, I realized that I screwed up the audio. It was the only interview that I fucked up the audio. So I had to call her and I had to say, Betty, look, I'm really sorry, but I screwed this up. I said, are you willing to come back? Right. And like 2 weeks later, she took the train. She never complained. She never, she was great, and we did a great interview. And now we did at the IONS conference last summer, we did a preview of the film, and there was like 15 people from the film at the screening. So everybody came up on stage and the audience asked questions and stuff like that. And that's been a big part of this for me, Sergey, is to have an audience Q&A after the screenings.
Yeah.
I just did a screening on Long Island a couple of weeks ago, and everybody stayed. It's a 2.5-hour film, and everybody stayed because they wanted to ask questions, So it's like people are hungry for this information, and I feel like that's part of being of service to my audience, is to provide them on the spot to get their questions answered. So, Betty's done that, Angela Harris, a bunch of people have done that, and it's just been wonderful.
Yeah, and you had Franco. Franco is my friend right now because we've done 8 interviews with him. I have one coming up. I just interviewed him like a couple of weeks ago again. Yeah, so he flew from Minnesota.
Franco's great.
Yeah, he flew from Minnesota to New York.
Yeah, that was, so again, I was after Franco. So I met Franco like 5 years ago. He's one of the first people I met online. And we were kind of working together, and way before I even thought about doing a documentary. So I had an ongoing relationship with him. And then when I asked him to be in the film, he had all this stuff going on. So it took a year for him to work me into his schedule. But yeah, he came to New Jersey. He stayed overnight. So we spent the day together, had dinner, the whole thing. And he's just a great guy. He's funny, he's sensitive, and he has a lot of wisdom.
Yeah. He's amazing. I mean, every time I speak with him, I'm recharged. It feels very fulfilling to have a conversation because you are surrounded by the energy, even online. But I can imagine when you've done these interviews in person with everybody. How was the interview with Daryl Anka? I interviewed him too, but it was online.
So Daryl is great. So here's the thing. I didn't let anybody channel. All right. That was one of the requirements. So even though, there's like 30 channels in the film, I didn't let any of them channel. And I did that for 2 reasons. Number one, again, this is for an audience that might not be familiar with the subject matter, that may not be familiar with these people. And I think, the first time you see somebody channeling, it could be kind of off-putting. It can be a little strange for people. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to build that strangeness factor, whatever, with my audience. But number 2, I didn't want people to think that you have to channel an extraterrestrial being to find spiritual awakening, or to improve your life or whatever. So my feeling was, every one of the people that I interviewed, at least, I didn't feel they had to channel. Sarah Landon, she's known for channeling the council and all that. She's brilliant on her own. It's like she didn't need to bring the council in.
Yeah.
And a couple of them were a little apprehensive because they're so used to channeling.
Yeah.
But, you know, so Daryl was somebody that I approached. It literally was a year before we could figure it out. But and basically I went to LA for his interview, and I found a location pretty close to where he lives. So I made it really easy for him. But one of the things that I was doing, Sergey, when I was there was I was staying with a friend, and she has 2 daughters. And one of her daughters was about 12 or 13. And I just felt, you know, this would be great for my friend's daughter to get involved with, to help me out. I didn't have anybody to help me anyway. So I invited her to come along, and she was kind of like my assistant. And what happened was, when it was time for Daryl's interview, I let her ask the questions. Right? So I knew that was good for her, kind of built her self-esteem a little bit. And Daryl was so gracious. You know, he was so cool about it. You know, he was complimenting her. I want to cry. I mean, he was such a kind person. You know, he was so nice to her, so nice to me. And I paid him, I paid him less because he wasn't traveling. I paid him like $100. He didn't have to do any of that, you know, but that's just who he is. He's just a beautiful guy, you know. And so the whole movie was like that. All these moments where people were just connecting with people, and people talking about their truth, and everybody, this was really important for me too. Everybody had a hopeful, positive message. Yeah. I don't want to scare the audience. I don't want the audience to be afraid of the future. I don't want the audience to feel guilty. You know, the whole idea is to remove some of that, so people can better navigate, because there are a lot of challenges. This is not to say that there are no challenges. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better in terms of society and culture and all of that. Yeah. But I didn't want to leave the audience in any way with anything other than a positive, uplifting message, you know, and that's what he's all about. Yeah. And you talk about a person who's put up, I mean, he's been channeling for 35, 40 years. Yeah. He's put up with all kinds of crap. The other thing that happened in the middle of all this was my younger brother died. Mm-hmm. And it was completely unexpected. And up until that point, Sergey, I was, you know, look, I haven't had an experience myself, but I definitely wanted to believe. I definitely felt like what everybody was saying was true. Yeah. It resonated with me. I kind of had this intuitive knowing. But when my brother died, and I was actually with I was with the medium when I got the news that he had passed. And she told me, she said, you know, you should really, you know, answer your phone, because I was ignoring my phone. And at that, you know, he was my dad had passed a few years earlier, but my brother was the most significant relationship for me where somebody died, right? I was so sad. I was so grief-stricken, you know, and here I am thinking that I know life is eternal and he's still with me and he's only a heartbeat away and all this other stuff. And none of that mattered. Yeah. And I had this overwhelming grief to the point where I was going to stop working on the film. I was going to stop everything. I just couldn't believe how sad I was. Yeah. And what happened was, it was almost 3 months where I didn't do anything but help my sister with his estate. And what happened was, I came back to some of the interviews that I hadn't watched yet. And I started watching the interviews, and I started doing a little editing. And it was working on this film that pulled me out of the grief, that pulled me out of the sadness. The other thing it did, though, was it really forced me to decide, do I really believe this stuff? Because now here I am bringing a film to the world that says life is eternal, there is no death. We're not our bodies, you know, we are eternal souls. And I really had to say, do I really believe that? Yeah. And I can honestly say now that is my absolute belief. It's more than a belief, it's a knowing. Like even though I haven't experienced it firsthand myself, there is no doubt in my mind that everything these people are telling us about the afterlife is true. Yeah. And it wasn't until I had that experience. And now looking back on it, and some of the mediums have told me, you know, that was part of our soul plan together. We planned that. You know, he was going to be part of this, and now the film is dedicated to him, which I laugh about it because he was not a believer in the afterlife. You know, he was this hardcore New Yorker. You know, I hadn't seen him in 2 years. I felt called to go visit him. He was living in Florida. He moved from New York. He's living in Florida. I called him up. I said, look, I want to come down for a week. We'll hang out. So I went down there, and we had, we weren't estranged, but we'd had our issues over the years. And I really felt like this is an opportunity to heal some of that stuff. Yeah. And also, being in 12-step programs, I had made an amends to him. I tried to take responsibility for my part in the problems that we had. So, I mean, we had a good relationship, but we weren't as close as we could have been. So, but I felt called to go visit him. So I spent a week there. We had a great time. I come home. 2 weeks later, he's dead.
Shit.
And he wasn't sick. I mean, he had some health issues, but none of it was, he was functioning. And so it was very shocking, but it really fit into this whole mosaic of my own personal journey through this understanding of how life really works and who we really are and what's really going on here.
Yeah, it's interesting that you abandoned such a lucrative, well, it sounds like a lucrative profession, entertainment lawyer, and moved into an artistical endeavor, doing photography. Who knows, you're going to get paid or not one day, and then into documentary filmmaker. That's risky.
Totally. But you know what? I'm so much happier. And I finally feel like I'm on purpose with my life.
Yeah.
Being a lawyer was great. I made a lot more money being a lawyer than I have as a photographer, but it's been much more satisfying. It's been much more, my life is infinitely better. Even though I have less money, it's infinitely better because I feel so engaged by what I do. I feel like I'm expressing myself. I feel like it's a creative outlet. The big thing for me, again, was just being afraid of criticism, rejection, and all of that, because I had a very critical upbringing. I was constantly criticized, blamed, shamed, and all of that. Yeah. And so, but again, as an adult, I had to realize that I was doing that to myself, and that was the problem.
Yeah, that was my problem in Hollywood with rejections. You write the screenplay and you write it like 10 times, it's still rejected. And it's been hard over there. But about the creative, I don't know why, but all my life I was drawn to creating something. I was a photographer like you, and since I was 14 years old, I was doing photography. Back then, nobody had cameras. If you have a camera, you're a photographer. And then, doing documentary films and then writing all the time into the creative, even though I was not making money, but I was always drawn to do something creative. I don't know why.
I was like 35 when I picked up a camera for the first time. I was economics, law, business. I have an MBA, I have a business background. I had zero creative aspirations. Even as a kid, I wasn't, So for me, it was like a midlife crisis turned into a whole new life for me.
All right, my friend, we have 1 hour material here. What else should we talk about? You want to say something else? Let me ask you about freedom. My question, what's your definition of freedom?
Oh, that's a good question. I never really thought about that. Freedom. So freedom, technically, I guess the dictionary definition is the ability to make choices without, hindrance from the outside. So being able to choose what we want. Again, I would say this, the biggest thing for me is recognizing that there's no limitations from outside myself if I choose to take responsibility for my life. Now, again, this doesn't mean that I'm not affected by the world, I'm not affected by the government, I'm not affected by this or that, but I still have the freedom to choose how I respond to that, right? And that's where the true freedom lies. It's not in being free of the challenges or free of the limitations. It's being willing to take responsibility for how I respond to those situations, because everybody's going to have challenges. Everybody's going to have limitations. That's a function of this life. That's why we come here. We come here as a soul for the challenges. We come here for the limitations, because that gives us the opportunity to experience who we really are as sovereign beings, right? We need to know ourselves as free. We need to experience constraints, restrictions, limitations. That's why we're here, for the duality, for the polarity. We can't know ourselves as light if there's no darkness. We can't know ourselves as good if there's no evil. I can't know myself as free if there are no restrictions.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I may start with this, in the beginning. We'll see, because it's good. We come here for the challenges. We come here for the duality. I like that. Let's give it.
Well, otherwise we're friggin' nuts, right? Then there's then why bother? This is, I asked this question in the film. One of the questions in the film is, why would a soul choose to leave heaven?
Yeah.
Because they all describe heaven as this wonderful, amazing, beautiful place. Why in our right mind would we come to a place where there's so much pain and suffering and limitations and restrictions? And they all say the same thing. This is where the soul grows.
Yeah.
This is our opportunity to know ourselves and our own experience. The analogy that I use is this. In heaven, we read the book on how to ride the bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
On earth, not only do we ride the bicycle, but we fall off the bicycle and scrape our knees.
Yeah.
And not only do we fall off the bicycle and scrape our knees, but all our friends are laughing at us. That's the earth experience, and that's why we're here. Because in that moment, I get to choose, am I going to feel bad about myself because I made a mistake and I fell off my bike? Or am I going to love myself? Am I going to nurture myself? Am I going to heal myself in that moment?
Yeah.
Right? Am I going to blame my friends and feel, and get revenge on them and push them off their bike? Or am I going to say, no, wait a second, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that vengeful person.
Yeah.
I want to be an expression of a higher character, a greater good. So in heaven, we are all those things, but we can't really know ourselves in that setting because there is no contrast.
Yeah.
There's nothing to bump up against. It's all love and light. So eventually we cease to experience ourselves as the light. We have to come into a world of darkness to know ourselves as light. That's the spiritual underpinning of all of this, as far as I can tell.
Beautiful, Peter. I think I got material for the beginning. No, for the intro. I'm gonna put some music over there. All right, now, if people want to find out more about you, about your film, about what you do, about your photography, would you like to share that here?
So there's a couple of ways people can find out more. So the first is the film website, everysoulknows.com, 3 words. There's all kinds of information about screenings. I'm doing screenings. You can go see it live and in person. But if you can't get to a live screening, the preview is available online. It's a $3.99 rental to see the film, to see the preview. If the money is an issue, just let me know and I'll refund the money. I don't want anybody to have to, in any way limit themselves financially just to see the film. And you can stream that on your computer. You can watch it on your phone. The in-person screenings are happening right now in the U.S., but hopefully I did do a screening in Ireland in November, and hopefully I get back to at least Europe and maybe Asia at some point with the film, because I love watching the film with an audience. You can find out more about my book. I highly recommend my book, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. All right. The website is bebiggertoday.com, BEBIGGER today.com. You can find out all kinds of information there about the book. It's set up as a workbook. If you want to find out more about my photography, you can go to peteralessandriaphotography.com. And to see my production, I also have a production company now called Mindful Entertainment, as opposed to Mindless Entertainment. And there's a website, mindfulentertainment.us, and you can see all the film projects that I'm working on. All my film projects are uplifting, spiritually empowering and uplifting works for the masses. Beautiful. And you can reach out to me on any of those websites. There's a contact form. I may not be able to respond to every email, but I'll do my best. And then the last thing is go to the YouTube channel for the film, at Every Soul Knows. You can see all the full-length interviews from the film for free, no ads. You can watch all you want on the YouTube channel.
Okay, is there a company called Mindless? Excuse me. Mindless Entertainment? Is that a production company like
Well,
that?
there's a whole industry. As far as I'm concerned, there's a whole
Hollywood
industry.
is Mindless Entertainment.
Yeah, you know, look, Hollywood is great. There's so many creative people. There's so many talented people, but I don't feel like a lot of the content is empowering the human race, is uplifting the human race.
It's not designed
especially
for that.
kids.
It's not designed for that, my friend.
Well, I have a feeling that you can entertain people and still have a positive, empowering message.
Yeah, you can.
I have a feeling like you can provide really quality content that is empowering instead of reinforcing the negative stereotypes and all that other stuff.
Yeah.